Good morning, GPAR. Matt Braden here from the professional staff at the association. So glad to see a nice turnout here for this morning's coffee talk. Um, as you know, a lot of stuff going on in city council, budget time, lots of moving parts. And obviously housing and those sorts of things are on the docket down the street here from our association headquarters. So the timing for this morning's coffee talk could not be any better. So we're really pleased to have this conversation, and it will be hosted by our president, Annette Collier. So good morning, Annette. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Glad to have you. Let's kick this thing off.
All right. Good morning, everyone. GPAR family and also Councilwoman Gauthier and her staff. Thank you so much for making today possible. I'm really excited about this talk because number one, Councilwoman Gauthier is in my district. She's representing the West Philadelphia area, so I'm really delighted that she's on the call with us. And now that we have you, Councilwoman, I know that you are very busy. Could you tell us about your district?
Sure. So first, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to GPAR for having me. I see friends in the room. I think I see my former colleague, Ellen Daum, and David Feldman, a former Lisker like me, and other friends. So glad to be here. As was said, I represent Philadelphia's 3rd council district, which is much of West and Southwest Philly. Each council district is about 160,000 people roughly. My district is incredibly diverse. So I have areas like Spruce Hill where we have multi-million-dollar homes, and Powelton Village. But I also have working class neighborhoods like Cobbs Creek and poorer neighborhoods like Mantua. 54% of the renters that I represent in the 3rd district are cost burdened. 30% of the homeowners that I represent are cost burdened. And we've seen real increases in housing prices, and income isn't keeping pace. So between 2000 and 2022, incomes in my district rose by 4%, but the median rent increased by 35%, and the average home value increased by 100%. And about 40% of my constituents earn less than $30,000 per year. And we've also seen real displacement. We've seen the Black population east of 52nd Street in my district cut in half between 2000 and 2020. And this was a big part of the reason why I ran for council. I'm from the 3rd district. I'm from a neighborhood called King Sessing, and I've seen how it has changed and why. While I welcome that change, and I think many residents welcome new people into the 3rd council district, I don't believe that that should happen on the backs of the longtime residents who have lived there. I believe that equitable development is possible. Development without displacement. And that's why I ran for council. And that's mostly what I focus on, both as a district council member, but also as the chair of council's Committee on Housing, Neighborhood Development, and the Homeless.
Very good. So could you give us the thoughts about the Mayor's Home Initiative? And just to disclose that I am on that task force. I'm really excited about it. And much of what you just talked about is something that, is a part of the mayor's front. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so first, kudos to you for being on that task force. Kudos to the mayor for having housing as her most urgent priority in her 2nd year, and for proposing a really bold investment. I think we need a bold, $800 million investment in housing to really make a dent in the housing crisis. And so I couldn't be more excited that this is the mayor's top priority. I do, I would like to see some changes in, the spending proposal. I think that with so much need in Philadelphia, with over 244,000 Philadelphians that are rent or mortgage burdened and spending significant amounts of their income on their rent, we have to make sure that we are supporting Philadelphians in need and that our city resources are used for people who are the most vulnerable from a housing perspective in our city. And the great news is we have amazing housing programs. We are known throughout the country for the housing programs that we have here in Philadelphia, but they've been underfunded for a long time. And so I don't believe that, the answer to the housing crisis is necessarily us coming up with a whole lot of new programs and new initiatives. I think many of the answers are right there. They're just underfunded. So for example, I'd love to see us scale up programs like basic systems repair. Any of you who talk to Dave Thomas at PHDC knows that we're spending, we have about $1 million a week in request for BSRP right now. That's not going to wane. We have an old city with old housing stock, and many times, or at least some of the time, people are getting displaced because they cannot make critical repairs. And so I agree with putting much more money into BSRP. It's a popular and well-used program. I think if we're going to take that program up to 100% AMI, then we're going to have to put a lot more money into it, because the need that we're seeing right now is with the program, I believe, going up to 60% AMI. I'd like to see us put more money into adaptive modification. That's another wonderful program that's allowing some of our most vulnerable homeowners to stay in their homes. The shallow rent program is one that's a great return on investment for the city of Philadelphia. It's helping some of our most low-income people afford subsidized rental units, and we need more funding in that program. I don't believe, though, that we should open up shallow rent to luxury apartments in Center City. I don't think that is the best use of the city's, dollars and precious resources. I think the answer to vacant units in Center City is that the rents need to come down to meet what the market is. And I would love to see us put much more money into targeted financial assistance. I think it's been estimated that on an annual basis, the rent gap, the gap between what residents have to pay for their rent and what their rent actually is about $1 billion. So targeted financial assistance, every time we put money into that program, it goes really quickly, but it is a good investment for the city. And I also think there are other things that we have to consider. I am in favor of having some sort of abatement, but I don't think that we should restore a 10-year tax abatement with no affordability requirements. That misses a huge opportunity to incentivize the private market to generate genuinely affordable housing. We've had legislation at the state level because due to Rep. Solomon's efforts that created an abatement program that incentivizes affordable housing. We should put that in place here in the city of Philadelphia. And so spending $800 million could be a transformative investment in affordable housing here in the city of Philadelphia, but only if we make the right decisions. I don't believe that we should spread that money over like 500 different programs, because then you're not making a meaningful investment in any one program. And I would like to see us or see the proposal focus much more on vulnerable Philadelphians from a housing perspective. But overall, it's positive that this is priority number one for the mayor, and that we're talking about a robust level of investment, particularly now that the federal government has become such an unreliable partner.
Okay. And you know what, Councilwoman Gauthier, I don't know if we mentioned, it's early in the morning for me, but did we mention that you are the chair for the housing for the city of
I
Philadelphia?
mentioned it.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right, very good. So what you have to say is very impactful in terms of the future, for sure. How's the budget process going?
It's going the way it always goes, we're kind of in the thick of it. We're still in the hearing part. So if anybody knows what budget is like, we're in these all day hearings, and it's important. It's important to dig into these proposals with the administration. And today actually is all public comment. So we'll be hearing all public comment about the school district of Philadelphia. At a certain point, sometime in May, the hearings will end, and then that's when we're in the thick of the negotiations. And as council members, we're lobbying each other to try to have, the same priorities or similar priorities, and then getting those priorities to the council president. And at some point, the council president will kind of go in the room with the mayor, and they'll come out with a proposal that hopefully reflects the best of the administration's priorities, but also reflects some of the things that council wants to see. But generally, that process doesn't wrap up until mid to end of June. So we're kind of in the thick of it at this moment.
Okay. How do we increase homeownership rates?
Sure. I think we have several ways that we can go about it. One, I'll say I love the Turn the Key program. That has been a wonderful initiative for the city of Philadelphia in terms of getting people into new homes for just under $200,000. That's like not possible really with this market. And so the fact that we've developed a program that allows us to provide that opportunity to people in our city is wonderful. And if folks are not familiar with that program, Turn the Key is an effort where the city is providing land to developers, but also quite a substantial subsidy to the homeowner, which brings those housing prices down dramatically. So in my district, for instance, I'm building about 90 Turn the Key homes in the neighborhood of Mantua, and the community is very excited about it. So I definitely think Turn the Key has been a great boon for home ownership in the city of Philadelphia. But I also think home repair is so important. The most affordable home is a home that you live in. And to the extent that we're helping homeowners to make repairs that they wouldn't be able to make otherwise, that's a great investment for our city. So definitely, I think we have to keep investing in basic systems repair. I'm a little bit disappointed to see that the budget proposal for this year doesn't include funding for Built to Last. Built to Last is a great program that not only funds repairs for homeowners, it also funds energy efficiency improvements that allows homeowners to really reduce their cost. I think that's something that council is going to fight to get back in the budget. And I think that's a great effort for home ownership. And I also think that we have to support our renters. A lot of folks' first step towards home ownership is an affordable rental unit, but more than half of the renters that I represent, as I mentioned at the top of this discussion, are cost burden. So that means that they can't even save for a home ownership opportunity because they're deciding whether to pay their rents or for their healthcare, or to pay their rent or to pay for food. And so saving really becomes prohibitive when you're in that situation. And so to the extent that we can help renters be more stable, I think it puts them on the path to home ownership as well.
Yeah, and in regards to that, I think one of the great things that happened, during the pandemic was renters were introduced to housing counselors, and
Yeah.
hopefully people will take advantage of that and helping them to create their budgets so that they will be able to pay their rent and also lead into home ownership. So that's good.
Shout out to the housing counselors. We've been fighting for the last few budget years for increases in that budget. You mentioned how critical they were during the pandemic. They did a lot of that work without extra assistance. We came up with all these extra programs. The housing counselors jumped right in to connect people to them, but without extra support from the city. So every year I've been on my side and the council side fighting with CDCs and other agencies to increase, that support from the city. And it's also going to need an increase as we move forward with the mayor's home proposal.
Right. Now, how do we attract new businesses and retain existing businesses?
Sure. Well, I think, to some extent, businesses want to be in a safe, attractive city. And so I think the mayor's agenda around clean, green, and safe is a wonderful thing for businesses. Businesses also want a skilled workforce. So our investments in education and workforce development are really meaningful. In my district, I've been trying to develop more workforce development programs for all the life sciences companies that have sprouted up. And I know there's like a lull in that industry at this moment, but I anticipate that that's just a moment in time. And so with Philadelphia's concentration in biotech and the life sciences, I think that's still a good area to look at. Council for many years has been working to reduce the tax rate, whether I have been on board with those proposals or not, they have moved forward. And I anticipate that there'll be a hefty cut this year. There's a proposal from the mayor to eliminate BERT over time, but there's even an even more dramatic proposal from council that I expect to come out during this budget season.
Okay. Very good. How can the city help mom and pop small rental property owners?
I think the landlord assistance program that we developed was one of the best things for mom and pop landlords. So this was a program that ran through PHDC where landlords could get I believe they were grants, not loans, but Andrew Goodman is on here from my office and he can correct me if I'm wrong. But we were providing landlords with grants to make improvements on their properties. And we had initially about $16 million in that fund, and it kind of ran out pretty quickly, but I'm hopeful that through the Mayor's Home Initiative, we will replenish that fund because it was a great way to help landlords to make critical improvements and keep their rental prices low. And we know that our mom and pop landlords want to be able to rent units affordably. I also think that rental assistance, where we can provide it, has been good for small mom and pop landlords. It goes directly into their hands and allows them to make up any gaps, in terms of their tenants not being able to afford the rent. Okay, Andrew says they're loans, but they're eligible for 0% interest, I believe, or full forgiveness.
Okay, I think, and I'll disclose because, I'm a property manager as well and a landlord. I think that I and some of our clients had some difficulties getting through in the system. So hopefully
With which program?
with the
Or with every
assistance
program?
well, yeah, I hate to say it, but most of the time I hear for every program.
Yeah.
But hopefully there will be something put into place where the response is given to the landlord, because that was most of the complaints. Now I get it, during the pandemic, people may not have been in the office, but a lot of landlords lost the opportunities. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, some of those people had to sell their properties, or they went into, or now they're going to be going through foreclosure because the
Yeah.
forbearance that has already come to an end.
Well, you bring up a good point, and that's the city's capacity. So we have to staff ourselves to be able to administer the programs, the vital programs that we're putting in place. So as we look forward to this major investment in housing, we do have to, from a city perspective, make sure that we have the capacity to be responsive, to administer all of the programs. And I also think that we have to look at streamlining our processes so that we are preserving and creating more affordable housing as well. And it'll be important for us as well to invest in the capacity of our partners, those housing counseling agencies and the other partners that we count on to help drive these initiatives. So that has to be a major part of what we're doing.
Okay. So what are your thoughts about the office vacancy rates and where do you see them going? Like downtown, I mean, it's kind of discouraging. And then you walk around and you go through the neighborhoods and you got strip malls that are vacant. It's just really sad. We don't have pharmacies, the list goes on.
This is just a moment in time, and we can be creative about fully bringing our downtown back. Now, I do have to say, I've gone to conferences, I've been to other downtowns, I've been to Denver, for instance, and other places, Denver, Oakland, other places for conferences. Their downtowns have not come back yet. Our downtown is much more vibrant than many of the places that I've gone to. And so I think we are at an advantage in one sense, in terms of bouncing back from the pandemic, but I also know that we're not fully there. And so, I think personally, I don't think my staff will agree, but I thought it was a good move for the mayor to bring back the workforce, to have more people downtown. And I think we have to think of other creative ideas, right? Like, what more can we do from a housing perspective to have more people in the area? What creative proposals can we think of around business attraction? I think we need to put our heads together around a vision for the downtown that brings it back fully. But I do feel confident that this is only a moment in time.
Okay. Yeah. So what are your concerns about funding at our institutions of higher education, and what's the broader impact?
It's a hard time right now with what's coming out of the White House. Trump stripping NIH funding from our universities has major ramifications on the entire city. And my council district alone, which includes University City, my district is home to 4 of Pennsylvania's top 10 recipients of NIH funding. And in fact, the National Institute of Health spent over $2 billion in Pennsylvania in 2023 that supported over 21,000 jobs and more than $5 billion in economic activity. And we're not just talking about scientists, we're talking about everything else that's connected to that industry. So tens of thousands of jobs are at stake, not just for scientists, but also for Philadelphians from every single walk of life. And so it can have a devastating impact on our economy and on our city. But I also think that we have to stand strong against these attacks. I've pushed back against what I've seen as compliance in advance from some of our local universities, because I don't believe that complying in advance against your mission is something that's going to stop a tyrant. He's going to keep going, and he's going to keep going, and he's going to keep going. And so I think we have to stand up for our values as a city. I think we have to come up with new ways to fund ourselves. The home initiative, it's a different topic, but it's a great example of how we can fund ourselves to carry out the things that are important to us. I think we have to look to our state at this moment, which has a large budget surplus to support, some of our needs that aren't being covered by the federal government. And I think we have to fight back. We've seen court cases across the country that have successfully bit back at some of these really inappropriate and dangerous attacks coming from the White House.
Yeah. What's your position on Mayor Parker's proposed increase of the real estate transfer tax? Now, you know who you're in front of here, your audience.
I know who I'm in front of, but the good thing is that I feel like my opinion on this already aligned, I think, with this group. I don't think I would have led with that. That wasn't my favorite part of the home proposal when I first saw or heard about the proposal. To me, it gave too much of an air of, we're cutting business taxes, we're cutting the construction tax, and we're going to put the tax on like regular people. Like, that's how we're going to fund ourselves. And so I didn't think it was the best message. That being said, I don't, from like a numbers perspective, I don't think that the increases will cause too much economic strife for everyday Philadelphians. When I first saw the bills, I was mainly concerned about our homeownership rate and if raising these costs would extend it further out of reach for first-time home buyers. So it's not my favorite thing, but I also don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But this group might differ.
Well, we're in the selling business, we're in the renting business.
Yeah.
And so, we want to make sure that when we do the cost analysis, not just us, but really the lenders, whether the person is going to be able to afford to buy in order to support the home initiative. So
Yeah.
hopefully council will take that into strong consideration.
Well, you better get out here. We have some more, well, you're talking to me, and I will definitely take your concerns back as the chair of the housing committee. But we also have more public comment sessions and more hearings, and we need to hear from y'all.
Okay, we're gonna do more than 2 minutes now.
Okay, cool. Hopefully, Council President Johnson will give you some leniency.
Hopefully so. Well, thank you so much. I know that there was some things in the chat. So Matt, I think somebody in the office is controlling the chat.
Okay,
there's
we
some
could,
questions we want
yeah, we could
to
definitely go
give to the
there.
councilwoman.
Yeah. So there was a question from one of our members, Mark Turner, and he is a small landlord here in the city, and he is very happy every year that he's able to afford to avoid or minimize rent increases.
That's awesome.
Any opportunity that the city has to either support or remove obstacles for property owners, that in Mark's view would be a beneficial multiplier effect on the lives of every tenant in our great town. So essentially some different things that he has to deal with managing properties. And I guess this goes back to one of the questions that Annette asked earlier, like that small property owner, of which 60% of all rental property owners are in our city. Like, what can we do for those guys? Help them out a little bit.
Yeah, well, definitely want to get that rental improvement fund back on the books and increase that money. Definitely think that TFA has been a good investment for the city. I'm open to other ideas. At one point, I was talking with Councilmember Landau, for example. She's my vice chair of the housing committee, and she wanted to do like a property tax credit that would help mom and pop landlords, and we want to hear from you. Now, I'll be transparent about who I am. I am a fierce advocate for renters because I think that renters are very vulnerable in the housing market. That's who I am. That's who I'll be. However, I also understand the critical role that mom and pop landlords play in our city's housing market. And I want to hear from you on what more we could do to help you so that you can continue offering affordable housing. So please reach out to me.
Yeah, and I will say that we wanted, you remember Rodney King, can we all just get along? And I think at the
Of
end of the
course.
day, yeah, but I'm not referring to, you as the
Yeah.
councilwoman and us. I'm
Yeah.
referring to the tenants and the landlords because, as has been mentioned, it takes both, in
Absolutely.
order
Yeah.
for it to even happen. And I think just removing the whole concept of them versus us, because none of us can have without each other. So, just that.
Yeah.
What else you got, Matt?
Here's an interesting question from Charlotte Bradley from our association, and that is, how can housing proposals get submitted to the committee for some consideration?
Yeah, please email me. I am at jamie.gauthier@phila.gov. Maybe Andrew can drop that in the chat. And my vice chair, rue.landau@phila.gov. We would love to hear from you.
And I would just like to say this from the association side. Official positions come from the association. So any member who may have a great idea, I think maybe a way to actually help amplify that would be to reach out to us first. We have Lexi McDowell, our government affairs director here. And perhaps maybe that idea is something that we've already have in the hopper and we've been advocating for, or maybe it's a new way to look at things, approach things, and we could go ahead and see if there's a way that we could marshal our resources here to amplify that issue, that idea, that proposal. But I think it's really important for our members to recognize if they go out on their own, they're out on their own. They're not on behalf of the association. It's super important because we don't want Councilwoman Gauthier confused or any other council member like, oh, I thought GPAR was saying this. And it could be we could have like our wires are crossed, and that's not good for them and their decision-making process. And it's not good for us for clarity of like what we're trying to go ahead and advance. So I think it's just like a super, super important thing in this advocacy stuff, because I think we've been really good and strong on making sure that we have a pinpoint direct message, because we want them, they have a lot of noise they have to sift through. We don't want to go ahead and make it noisier. So it's part of that advocacy stuff. And I think the Councilwoman would probably appreciate that as well. So I like that, Charlotte. Thanks for reaching out. And then
I think that's a part of our, let me just say, I think that's a part of our membership benefit in our 117-year history. And also, Councilwoman, thank you so much for the, what do you call that? You gave us at my inauguration, Matt, what's the word? The blue binder?
proclamation.
Yes. So thank you very much from myself.
You're welcome.
And also the
Well deserved.
Thank you so much. Matt.
All right, we're good. Why don't we wrap up?
All right. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. I know you're going to be very busy for some months, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to chat with you all, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Take care.